This is Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. If you have an existing estate plan or are in the market for one, Todd Lutsky is here to answer your questions and help you plan for later life. Ask Todd is presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 35 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Visit CushingDolan.com. Now, here's Todd Lutsky.
And we are joined now by Mr. Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing and Dolan. Segment here, it's Ask Todd. This is your opportunity to ask Todd your questions about your estate plan. Usually only have time for a couple of questions, so get on the phones early if you want to make sure we get to you. The studio line here is 888-205-2263. I know plenty of you are listening right now trying to beat the heat because, well, it's a little bit roasty out there. So you might as well, get to chat with Todd about it too. Again, 888-205-2263 is the studio line to ask Todd your questions about your estate plan. One more time, that is 888-205-2263. Mr. Lutsky, how are you?
I'm never better. How are you?
In a little pain.
It's always something with you.
Well, I walked into a lamppost yesterday.
Yeah?
I'm okay, though. Only light injuries.
Well, that's not bad, then.
So, nothing too bad. Todd, I want to talk a little bit about Medicaid planning. And, there's all different kinds of estate planning that you can do at different points in your life. When is the right age or the age range when Medicaid planning should start being incorporated into most people's estate plans?
So, as a general rule, there isn't one, right? So I've made up a rule. Okay?
Oh.
Yeah. The
Lutsky rule?
Yeah, there's really no rule. It's my own rule of thumb. And so when clients come in, we ask questions, right? We ask a lot of questions. And the first 4 questions that we ask are, do you want to avoid probate? Well, yes. Do we like to reduce your estate tax liability? Federal and state, well yes. We want to provide a nice bloodline plan to the family and not only efficiently from a tax perspective, but maybe protect them from future creditors and divorces. Yes. And then depending on your age, so this gets to the question, Chuck, how old? I usually look at age and size of the estate when I answer that question. So if I'm going through this checklist of questions and I look over at their age and they are 60 or 65 and up, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the question, number 4, do you want to protect assets from the nursing home? Not advocating, just educating. And depending on the answer to that question will depend on whether or not I go to the whiteboard and explain a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust, okay? Irrevocable to protect from the nursing home. And lastly, size of the estate. If you're worth $10 million, you don't need Medicaid planning.
Because you can pay for you're
self-insured. I mean, the interest and dividends you're earning from your investment portfolio more than will cover your stay. So you don't need my help. But size of the estate also matters.
You don't think Jeff Bezos tries to qualify for Medicare?
Probably not. No, I think
probably would be tough anyways.
I think it'd be impossible. A little bit that I know.
I was being, leaving the possibility open. Talking with Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan. If you've got a question for Todd, studio line here is 888-205-2263. That is the number to call to ask Todd your estate planning questions. Again, 888-205-2263. Todd, you said generally that 60 to 65 range is where you start asking people if they're interested in it. Are there any downsides to doing Medicaid-related planning in your 40s or 50s?
Well, I think there probably is. Usually the kid is serving as trustee. Your children are generally minors at that age, and you can't really deal with it.
You don't want a 7-year-old being trustee.
Yeah, not really happening there. And the other thing is, while you do have a ton of control over these irrevocable trusts, borrowing money isn't the easiest thing when they're in there, and you might be moving in and out of borrowing money and refinancing and buying new homes and wanting to borrow against those houses. So I'd say probably when you're too young, it's too young. Don't do it.
Talking with Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan. Again, the studio line here to ask Todd your estate planning questions is 888-205-2263. 2263. We're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, it's going to be right to your questions with Todd Lutsky. So that phone number again is 888-205-2263. Quick break, your questions with Todd next.
Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky every Wednesday at 10:30, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. You're listening to Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
All right, we've got Todd Lutsky here from Cushing and Dolan. Still a little bit more room on the phone line, so if you do have a question related to your estate plan, call 888-205-2263 to speak with Todd now. That number again is 888-205-2263. Todd, let's go to a caller for you. Then we've got George in Woburn all queued up. George, what's your question for Todd Lutsky?
Good morning. My wife and I have an irrevocable trust with you, but we do have an IRA, 401k, stock, bank account. Is there any way to protect that?
So we have to break this down just a little bit. We're going to say, let's just see if I can and sort of separate the two because they're very different in terms of assets, right? So the stocks and the bank accounts that are non-qualified, okay, meaning not in your IRA, not in your 401k. I assume those can be retitled to the trusts. Okay, I don't know. Do you have one trust or two? One for husband, one for wife, or do you have just one joint trust?
One joint trust.
So, and it's irrevocable. So you can take some of those stock and investment accounts and retitle them to the trust. If so, you're going to need a tax ID number for the trust, which we would have recommended at the time when you did your planning. So if you have your trust, take a look at the top right-hand corner of the document, and in the top right-hand corner of the first page of the trust would be a ID number. It would be like either 04-something, something, something. So if you have that ID number, then you use that ID number in the name of the trust to title the Fidelity account, the Schwab account, the bank account that you want to change into that trust. So yes to that. 401ks and IRAs, no, right? We cannot put those into the trust today because in order to put those into the trust, and unlike the stock account that I just talked about, you cannot change the name on that account to the name of the trust like you can with an investment or bank account that is non-qualified. Here, if you tried to do that, you'd have to first take the assets out of the IRA, out of the 401k, into your name, and of course that means into income. And so now you're going to have an income tax liability when that money hits your personal bank account before you transfer it from your personal bank account into the trust. So I don't want that big income tax hit today. But I do like the idea of putting some of your other accounts into the irrevocable trust to get those protected. Now, when you add those to the trust today, you will start a new 5-year waiting period, but only for those new assets, not for what we put in the trust when we set up your account. So, or your trust initially. So hopefully that helps, but those are the excellent kinds of questions that a lot of people have when they're dealing with these irrevocable trusts. And for George, after 5 years, these things will be protected. But for many who haven't done any planning and are faced with nursing home care, they might find that assets are at risk. Or even for people like George who have done their planning, but some stuff always remains outside the trust. If you find yourself in that position faced with long-term care, don't go it alone. Ask for help. Get a lawyer to help you with the application, not only because you could make mistakes, but lots of people don't realize you don't have to write the check. So I tell people, get this guide, Last Minute Medicaid Eligibility Guide. So even before you're faced with nursing home care, you'll understand how to make countable assets non-countable. And you can do it last minute. The guide explains that, not only from houses to rental properties to vacation homes. Each property is treated differently. Each type of asset is treated differently, and differently for a married versus a single person. So this guide is really for everybody who is faced with long-term care situations. Call and get it, 866-848-5699, or you can go to our website, legalexchangeshow.com, and download it there. One last time, 866-848-5699, or you can go to our website, legalexchangeshow.com, and download it there.
Todd, I've got another caller all ready for you. Let's go to Phil on the Cape. Phil, what's your question for Todd Lutsky?
Yes, good morning. Todd, you had done an irrevocable trust for me more than 5 years ago.
Good.
And this is on properties. There are multiple properties.
Okay.
I'm now in a situation where some of those properties need to be refurbished, repaired.
Yep.
And using the trust money, we don't want to run out of the trust money, so now I'm digging in my pocket to pay for repairs on properties that I don't recoup any money back because it's in a trust.
When you say you don't recoup, what do you mean? You recoup? I mean, you recoup it either with a higher basis. If it's a capital improvement, you get to still depreciate it. If it's rented, I don't know what you mean recoup it. If it sells, you'll get the money. The money will go into the trust, but it's still yours.
Right, but it's in the trust, so I don't receive any money from the trust. Everything that rents go into the trust, they get. I've never gotten a dime.
Well, but you are absolutely entitled to it through that trust. So you must be doing something. In other words, my trust says income shall be paid to the donor. So that rent goes in, that rent comes out to you. Does it have to? No. But if you want it, it's yours.
At what percent?
Not at what percent. You get 100% of the rent. So if you generate $20,000 a year in rent, you get $20,000 a year put in your personal checking account.
But I've got to have the trust have enough money to operate for expenses that the trust.
Absolutely right. And you can use the money to pay all those bills. That's your money to use any way you want. If you want to use it to maintain and operate the building, perfectly okay. You want to use it to go out to dinner, use it to go out to dinner.
Okay.
Absolutely your money. So I just want to make sure you remember how that trust works.
All right. Thank you, Todd.
Yep, you're welcome. Good. No, those are the kind of questions that people really need to understand, because that's an operational question of the trust, and it shows how much control and flexibility he does have.
Todd, on the topic of preparing for Medicaid situations, have there been any real changes in the tools available for Medicaid planning over the last decade or two, or is it pretty much the same stuff that was available before is what's available now?
Yeah, and that's really there have been some attacks on these tools, and I guess when I say changes, it isn't that the law changed. In other words, the big law change was 2006, so we got to go all the way back there to the what they called the Deficit Reduction Act. I love how they broke the backs of the elderly, the disabled, and the poor to balance the budget. But that was the change that occurred back in 2006. Since then, your main tool to protect assets in advance from a nursing home remains these irrevocable trusts. Okay, and so they still work. But when you ask about changes, I'm going to tell you that there have been some. How do I say it? Not changes, but improvements. What do I mean? These, and Chuck, we've talked about how I used to have to go to fair hearings and fight and battle these things. We now have a Supreme Court case in Mass that says these trusts work if they're drafted correctly. So that's a really big change that says the same tool that exists works even better.
Todd, thanks for joining us today.
Always a pleasure.
This has been Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky has been presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 30 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Call 800-393-4001 or visit CushingDolan.com. The views expressed in this segment are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Armstrong Advisory does not provide any legal or tax advice. Please consult with your legal or tax advisor on such matters. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Changes to Medicaid occur almost every year, and if you're not informed, your assets could be at risk, especially if you or your spouse need nursing home care. Cushing & Dolan are experts in elder law, and their new guide is called Last Minute Medicaid Eligibility. It'll help you understand the Medicaid process, which is critically important if you're retired or getting close to retiring. The guide has important information regarding numerous strategies that can protect your assets from the nursing home. It could be your primary home, a vacation home, or any rental property you may own. You've worked hard to achieve wealth, so don't take chances when it comes to protecting it. Get your copy of Cushing & Dolan's brand new guide called Last Minute Medicaid Eligibility. Call right now, 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request it online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. That's LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.